Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews, and welcome to my review for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 5, Charades, or as some might call it, Spock-a-Muck 2. If you have not seen the episode, you should not be watching this video, spoiler warning, etc., etc. Alright, first of all, apologies for my review being a little later than normal. Probably nobody cares about this other than me. But usually I try to record it before I go to work and get it out there uploading while I'm going to work. This morning I recorded it and then I went back and tried to listen to it, and it's just me going, because I have my microphone on mute for the whole damn time. So all that recording is in the garbage. It's nothing. So I have to do the whole thing all over again. And I didn't have time to do it before going to work, so I had to wait till I got back to work. And I got up at noon, but I had a lunch date with a friend of mine, and we had lunch and chatted. And so this is later than usual, so here I am. And as I said, nobody probably cares about this other than me. So, for this episode, I'm going to be honest in saying that I was not looking forward to it. I first became aware of this episode when I read an article written by one of the critics who got the first 6 episodes in advance, and he named off all the first 6 episodes, and he just, like, very vaguely, like, he referred to this one as a Spock to Pring Chapel comedy episode in the same vein as Spock-a-Muck. That's how he referred to it. And I did a live stream where I named off all those episodes, and I think I got this one mixed up. I think I called it episode 6 when I did that live stream, but it's actually obviously episode 5, which is the same spot that Spock-a-Muck was in last year. So when I read about that, I was like, I'm going to pinpoint that as the possible episode that I'm going to like the least of the 6. And then when I saw the preview and then I saw the sneak peek and saw what the episode was about, I was like, that looks dumb as shit. Like, that looks like the worst of the worst sitcom trope. And I wasn't looking forward to it. And yeah, they did as well as they could with this episode. I don't think I like it as much as Spock-a-Muck, and I definitely did not like Spock-a-Muck as much as other people did. Spock-a-Muck had the body switching trope, which is a trope that I dislike, but I thought they did a really great job with it. I overall enjoyed it, but other people were saying it was like their favorite episode and all that. Yeah, well, let's pump the brakes on that. Like, Spock-a-Muck was way better than I thought it would be. And they did really great with a bad trope. This one, I think, didn't do as great with a bad trope, but better than expected still. And the bad trope here is the whole grumpy parent-in-law, or the asshole parent-in-law, unaccepting parent-in-law, however you want to look at it, whether it's a mother-in-law or father-in-law. And to throw in the thing where Spock turns into a human, that's like the wacky hijinks part of it, because there's always got to be some sort of wacky hijinks if you want to do a sitcom trope. And that is a trope I don't like. It's the whole meet the parents trope. And Star Trek has done it before in an episode that I hated, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was Deep Space Nine, where Jadzia had to impress General Martok's wife, because remember, Martok had invited Worf into his house, so he was technically like his son or whatever. And so Martok's wife became Jadzia's like asshole parent-in-law, and she had to try to impress her, and she was being a real bitch and like hard ass and strict and all the things that the stereotypical parent-in-law is. And these types of stories, and I hated that episode. This one was better than that one. There's definitely some things that I enjoyed of it, and plus just the characters are just so good and the actors are so good and there's so much good chemistry and good, comic chemistry. So there were definitely things that I enjoyed about this episode. So which I will get into. There were parts that I did like that I laughed at. But overall, like, yeah, it's a really faulty trope, a really faulty premise to this episode that you can't fully recover from, and it didn't recover from as well as Spock and Muck did with the crappy body switching trope last year. So yeah, this is for me the weakest episode of the season, which I had predicted looking at what the episode descriptions were going to be, that I thought this would be. And it's interesting, just on the side note, how everybody has their own weakest episode of the season. Jessie Gender said hers was the episode 1. Sean Farrick last week on Track Culture said that episode 4 was his weakest of the season. I haven't watched his review for this week yet, so I don't know how he feels about this one. But I thought last week's episode was fine. It wasn't the weakest one for me, but it was the weakest one for him. And of course, my brother said episode 3 was his weakest. For me, that's like the best episode of the season by far. But it's interesting that everyone has their own weakest. Although the dude who wrote, well, I forget who it was, who wrote that article that I wrote initially, or read initially, that described the 6 episodes, also said that this was his weakest. And he also did not like Spock and Muck as much as other people. So we were on the same page. But everyone has their different weakest. This is mine. But there were things I enjoyed about it, so let me get into a little more details on it. Okay, why don't I start by talking about the positives, some of the things I did enjoy before I get into more of my critiques. There were some funny parts. There were parts that I laughed at. The part where Spock comes out wearing that winter hat with the Starfleet emblem on it, which tickles me that such a thing exists. Because that's a hat that Spock always wears to cover his ears. Usually when he travels back in time. I'm speaking of the Leonard Nimoy Spock mainly, but I think it was funny where he's like, oh, this is standard issue. And Pike's like, I got one too. Like, that made me laugh. There are I can't think of any. There were other little jokes like that I was like, that's funny. I like that. And also, speaking of Spock and his mom, I love Amanda's appearance here, played by the same actress who played her in Discovery. I think this episode did a really great job of exploring their relationship. I love that Sarek was not there, which is true with canon. They don't talk. But I love it gave them a chance to connect, and we got to explore a little bit what it was like for Amanda to live on Vulcan for so long as a human, which they've touched on before in Discovery, but it's Spock realizing that was the case for her and coming to that realization about that mom and connecting with her in that way. That was really nice. I did think that worked well for me. So the Spock and Amanda relationship worked well for me. The Nurse Chapel story, until we get to the end, I'll talk about the ending later when I get into the things that didn't work for me. But her character arc throughout was pretty strong. So I did like that she went off to those, aliens or whatever. Actually, that's another thing I found funny is that these aliens were like bitchy customer service reps, but they were these, interdimensional beings or whatever. That concept is a bit silly, but I liked it. It worked for me. So that was fun. But yeah, I did like Nurse Chapel's character story in this episode, except for that ending, which I'll get to. Now, as far as some of the things that didn't work for me, most of the humor didn't. I found it to be very trite and formulaic. As I said, this is a trope that I've seen a million times, and I don't find it particularly funny. Like the asshole parent-in-law, I don't actually find that to be all that funny, and I feel like it's repetitive. I feel like it's pretty much the same thing every time. I saw very little difference between T'Pring's mom and then what was that, Martok's wife, like Worf's adopted mom, I guess. I felt like it was the same character basically. One's Klingon and one's Vulcan, but the same. They're all the same characters. Like it's just kind of old. Like I just don't find that to be funny. It doesn't make me laugh. Now, actually, I did watch. It's funny. I did watch a movie recently that has the same trope called. I think it's You People. It's on Netflix, and where Eddie Murphy is the asshole father-in-law. That I did appreciate because it had a lot of nuanced racial commentary that it mixed in with the comedy. But the whole asshole father-in-law aspect of the movie, I didn't find that funny, but I did like other aspects of that movie, so it was okay. But anyway, as far as this episode goes, yeah, it's just like just didn't do anything new with it, and then Pike like trying to distract them and trying to just stall for time with playing charades. That was random, like charades. Why charades? Like I don't know. Like that seems another like stereotypical sitcom thing. If I haven't mentioned this before, I grew up on sitcoms, and so I've seen all the sitcom tropes. I'm very sensitive to sitcom tropes. Maybe this kind of thing was funny to me 40 years ago when I first saw it on Three's Company, but it's not funny anymore. I've like Pike stalling for time to play charades. I could tell like they were trying. I was supposed to be laughing at that. I was like, yeah, I might have laughed at that 40 years ago, but this is, I've seen it a gazillion times. It's really trite and overdone at this point. I will also say though, I don't think anything here was actively unfunny, which is a term that I've used where things like really just rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't think it went quite that far, but I just didn't find them funny. Because I've seen this a gazillion times. There was nothing new about it. And there were funny parts, as I said. There were things that did make me laugh. But overall, yeah, this didn't work for me. And Spock and T'Pring's relationship in this episode, not anywhere near as good as it was in Spock and Muck. T'Pring was pretty much just whining and bitching the whole episode, and there was not any chemistry between them. And her like just suddenly deciding that they need to take a break, I don't think that matches up at all with what we've seen before. I do like how they're at least trying to head in the direction of canon where in canon, like in the original canon, like T'Pring had never met Spock before. I mean, that was very clear. But at least this makes a little more sense if they take a break. Like her behavior ultimately in the Amok Time episode would make a little more sense. But does anyone believe we're never going to see T'Pring again in the rest of Strange New Worlds? I don't. We'll see her again. But if they took a break and never saw each other again until then, that would make a lot of sense. But that's not going to happen. Now there's, speaking of canon, Nurse Chapel and Spock. I'm not a canon hawk. Listen, I'm really not. But this is one that has always bothered me. And on the one hand, I do appreciate that they're adding more depth to a very shallow storyline from the original series where it was just Nurse Chapel having a schoolgirl-like crush on Spock with him not returning it at all. But, so this does add more depth. This is more interesting, but it completely contradicts what we saw before. So I've heard people like come up with theories that, maybe they're going to resolve this in universe where Spock is going to have all of his memories of his feelings for Nurse Chapel erased or something. And that's dumb too. Yeah, I don't think they need to do that either, but it's just like, this does not make any sense. This is like completely goes against what the original series did. So I don't know how I feel about it. Well, I guess we'll see. I'm not a huge fan. But maybe it's not as bad as I think. Maybe it's fine. I don't know. I'm not a fan. Okay, so let me go ahead and wrap up and give my review out of 10. So my review, with 1 being the lowest possible score and 10 being the highest possible score for Spock and Muck 2, or Charades, as it's actually called. is a 6. It's funny, when I originally recorded my video where I couldn't, where, you know, I was like, because it was muted, I gave it a 7, and then I thought on it more, and I was like, no, it's a 6. So maybe it is good that I had to re-record this later, because the more I sat with it, the more this episode is definitely a 6. The more like that trope bothers me, the completely unfunny, overdone, trite, repetitive, mundane trope of the asshole parent-in-law. So, but there was some humor in it. I forgot to mention some of the humor of Spock as a human, and kind of redoing some of the same things he did at the beginning of the episode as a Vulcan. I did like some of that too. The same with the hand. Pike did insert some charm into this. This was certainly a lot better than the Deep Space Nine version of this. But it's still, it's not my thing. So 6 is the best that I'm gonna give this, which is still, it's not a terrible rating. It's a positive rating. It's a 6. That's what it gets. All right. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Please join me next week as I review season 2, episode 6. And please check out my Star Trek Top 100 if you have not already. I just put my video up for numbers 50 through 26. It's an hour-long video, but you can click on timestamps to each part if you want. Anyways, subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you really soon. Goodbye.